you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And sometimes it feels like we are living in a parallel dimension. When we think of our lives a year ago, it feels like another galaxy far, far away. And for many of my constituents, and particularly those isolating on their own, it's this impression of being stuck in a parallel life, subject to confusing and inconsistent communications, battling alone through a long tunnel with no light at the end that is so dispiriting, undermining mental well-being and the success of public health measures. That's why we need a circuit breaker now and a roadmap to controlling this virus. But I imagine another parallel universe, the one in which the government got a grip on the virus back in March and did not let go, where the Secretary of State did not decide to stop tracking community infections in March, but instead took up the offer of local environmental health officers and give local authority public health teams, such as the one in Newcastle, led by the excellent Eugene Milne, the responsibility and the resources to set up local community tracking and tracing. As Alison Pollock, Professor of Public Health at Newcastle University, said in April, you need people on old-fashioned things like telephones or going door to door, and they need to be local teams because they need to understand the local communities. The fact is, Madam Deputy Speaker, that without the government's Health and Social Care Act of 2012, which led to the decimation of public health disease control and both its centralisation and fragmentation, without 10 years of austerity, which slashed the capacity of the state and our public services, and drove up inequality on which the virus feeds, without a Secretary of State who put his faith in technology, when, Madam Deputy Speaker, and as an engineer I know that it is only ever people who are the solution, without a Prime Minister who is scared of difficult decisions and unable to grasp detail, and without a government steeped in the ideology of the free market knows best, we could be in that world. Instead, we find today only 60% of test and trace contacts are reached by the £10 billion Serco test and trace. We should be in a position where we know where the disease is. So whilst coronavirus remains a deadly threat, we feel confident we know where it is and how to avoid it. In Newcastle, we are battling to stay in Tier 2, and I urge everyone to follow the coronavirus measures, the security measures. But I also say that without a proper track and trace, we are working blind, and the failure to control the disease is a failure of the government and not my constituents. Finally, in the last minute, I want to talk about jobs and the re-emergence of mass unemployment on Tyneside, which would be another failure of this government. 2 weeks ago, I held a business roundtable in Newcastle, and I was struck by how hard so many businesses are working to do the right thing, investing thousands in COVID security, keeping their customers safe, keeping their employees safe, protecting jobs. So I really want to urge the government to work with the local authorities, to work with Newcastle City Council, to communicate effectively to businesses who feel betrayed, and to ensure that the support is there for businesses and the plan that they can follow, but also that no one is excluded. We've seen mass unemployment in Newcastle under a previous Conservative government. If our viable sectors, and our sectors are viable, and our viable jobs are destroyed by this during this pandemic, it will be another failure of a Conservative.